right, welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Today I have a man I've gotten pretty close to this offseason, Coach John Puckett, the defensive coordinator at Centerville High School. Coach, how are you doing?
Good, man. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
No problem. No problem, Coach. I have no idea when this is actually coming out, but somewhere probably close to his also good friend Rob Page, who we've had on as well, who is also a good friend of the channel. Um, but Coach, before we kind of get into, we're going to probably hit a variety of topics today. How did you end up back at Centerville? I should phrase it that way because you've been there before, and so how do you end up back on there? What was your kind of career path that got you to be the defensive guru that you are?
Yeah, right. More like a defensive idiot. Um, it's amazing when you have better players, you're a guru, but when your players aren't very good, you're a moron. But I don't know, I started coaching. This is going to be my 22nd year. I started when I was 21 or 22 in Flint, Michigan, right after I was done playing in college at Saginaw Valley State. I coached for 6 years at Hamady High School in Flint, and then I moved back to Ohio in '05 and got hooked on with my high school coach, Jim Place, and coached with him at CJ for a year in '05, and then I went with him to Hamilton for 3 years as I was an offensive coach in Michigan. I was the offensive coordinator, and we ran triple. And then when I moved back to Michigan, is when I kind of started my defensive coaching career. Even though I was a defensive player in college, I played corner. So I coached the corners for Coach Place for 3 or 4 years, and then I went to Richmond, Indiana, and coached the DBs there, and went back to Hamilton for a year to coach the DBs. And then when Coach Place retired from Hamilton, J.J. Ramsey was a defensive coordinator at Centerville at the time in 2010. He asked me to come down and coach the corners, and I interviewed there and got the job. And in 2010, I got sucked into that's when my love affair with Centerville high school football kind of began. And it's just it was a place that, even though I've left it a couple times to pursue other opportunities, I always end up coming back. It's home, right? So it's a place where you just, where you fit. Like the community has always welcomed me and embraced me, from a DB coach to when I became the defensive coordinator after the 12 season, I forget when it was. And I did that for a few years under Ron Ullery, who is a tremendous mentor of mine. I learned a ton from. And then my wife her job got transferred down to Charleston, South Carolina. So I coached at Goose Creek High School down there. And you want to talk about talent, man, we were loaded with talent at that school. Everybody we played had dudes everywhere. And then, so that job opportunity for her fell through, and my job came back open up at Centerville. So when we moved back home to here, we just moved to Centerville, and I got my job back there as coordinator, did that for a couple of years. And then my lifelong dream was always to be a head coach. And then had an opportunity to go to Butler High School. I did that for 3 years, and it didn't work out. And my son's going to be a freshman at Centerville next year. So I talked with Brett Ullery, Ron's son, who's been a very good friend of mine for 10, 11 years. And I was able to get my job back as a defensive coordinator at Centerville. Like I said, it's home. And that's basically, it's my third time coming back, and everyone has said to me, welcome back home. Like it's where I fit, it's where I belong. The kids, there's just a connection there, a feeling of being a part of something that it's one of those things I just can't shake. It's like it's meant to be.
Now, I totally forgot you played for Coach Place,
Mm-hmm.
who I've talked to, not on this podcast, but just I've interviewed, and he's just generally a good person.
Mm.
What was that experience like? Not only playing for him, but coaching for Coach Place, because I've only had a handful of interactions with Coach. They've all been
I've known
fantastic.
Coach Place since I was maybe 4 years old. He was me and his oldest son, Jimmy, or his only son, but his oldest child, Jimmy, and I are the same age.
Okay.
So we played Little League Baseball together and T-ball. And Coach Place was our T-ball coach. And then he was our Little League Baseball coach when we were 8. And so he used to have this Bayless Buyers camp that he held at Welcome Stadium, and it was free. And, Keith Byers and Martin Bayless came back, and they brought all these NFL guys, and they had it at Welcome Stadium for a couple of days. And it was like, I don't know, grade school kids were in the morning, and then the high school kids were in the afternoon, and it was awesome. Well, that camp was always I think it was in June. And my T-ball game, he brought Keith Byers and Martin Bayless to the T-ball game. And I was like, holy cow, like, that's Keith Byers. I had no idea who Martin Bayless was back then, but I knew who Keith Byers was from when he was a running back at Ohio State. And, you see this, and, Coach Place is like a gigantic of a man. And, he's got these big old, like, meat hooks for hands. They're like catcher's mitts. And he's one of those things, like, you didn't realize how intense and how passionate he was when you were that young of an age. And then when I was a freshman at CJ, that was his first year as the varsity football coach at CJ. And to see a totally different side of him. And, he's one of those guys that no matter what, if you're one of his guys, he'll do anything for you. He stops everything he's doing and, will give me advice, will mentor me, he's always wanting to know how you're doing, how your kids are doing. And I got a funny story for him. So the night I met my wife, my wife and I ran into him over at Kramer's bar, right?
Okay.
Over there on Irving Avenue. And for some reason, Jimmy was in town from Wisconsin, and her and I just happened to go in there. And they were all in there. We had a blast, and she sat with Mrs. Place, and then I sat with all the guys, and we were talking and everything. Well, fast forward about, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks later, we're getting ready to play our first game, and I came to him and I said, and mind you, I was kind of a knucklehead, kind of an idiot back then, well, more so than I am now. And I said, hey, Coach, I need 2 tickets for the game. He said, oh, I already gave your dad your tickets for your mom. And I said, oh, no, it's for Ann. And he was looking one way, and he stopped, and he turned, and he was doing something on the computer. He looks at me, he goes, you're still with Ann? And I was like, yeah. He goes, oh, I figured she'd have got rid of you a long time ago. And I started laughing. And you know how, when he starts laughing, it's one of the funniest things in the world. He let out this big old bellow of a laugh, and Johnny. And I'm like, good one, man. Can I have the ticket now? So I love that dude, man. He's like a second or third father for me. I just been really, really fortunate to have him in my life.
I honestly forget who sent me his number this off season. I want to say it was Bartley. I could be wrong about that, but like, it's either that or I honestly think it would have been Bartley. I can't, or it's either that or maybe Mo, and that's who. And like I said, me and him have talked a couple times. Obviously, I've interviewed him, did a little commercial for his thing for him. But yeah, and I know we're doing his 7-on-7. Kent Ridge is doing his 7-on-7 for quality this summer. So
yeah,
but yeah, no, it's like I've never heard one person say one bad thing about him. Mo Harden also says always when he brings up Jim, nothing but positive things. Well, Roy says good stuff about him. So
well, he's just he's just one of those guys. He's like every other head coach. He's got a little bit of an ego, but it's not it doesn't control him. He's just he's got such a servant heart. You know what I mean? He just wants to see everybody do really well. He's just, he's special, man. He's just a special dude, man.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. So, like I said, I think that's a good. That's good. I don't know. I don't even know what's a word. Good good jumping point to our talk. Because I mean, me and you've talked a lot of defense this offseason. I mean, by the time this comes out, like I said, coaches, both his videos on his Ripple is match stuff, both versus 2x2 and 3x1. I'll put the links to those in the bio. But I first want to go in because before you became a Ripple is match guy, and we had this conversation a little bit last time off screen, you were more of a man coverage guy because that's what you played in college.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll bug you about man coverage in there, but from it, why did you switch from man to Ripple is match over the years? What was kind of, because obviously I know you're not a big fan of the two read TCU stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as Coach Vass points out right now, there's really three major defensive schools of thoughts. There's the Rip Liz group. There's the TCU 425 group, which has kind of evolved into a variety of like subsects. And then
Right.
there's the Nate Woody 3-4 stuff, as he kind of pointed out to me. And he didn't know who that was really in depth until he started doing a lot more research. And then there's a bunch of like smaller sects of various stuff. So what kind of made you choose go from the man coverage heavy stuff that you did to the Rip Liz stuff?
Well, I think. Well, I mean, I'm a one high guy. Like I don't know. It just fits me better, I guess. But I think that with the match, the Ripley stuff, it gives you the ability, right? It gives you the ability for it to turn into man if you want it to, right? I mean, there's two different ways you can play Rip Liz. I mean, you can play it like a zone match, right? So, which is technically how we play it, and you can play it as a man match, right? Which is, you know, we have ways to get to that when we want to, but depending on what you do as a route, in my opinion, it allows us to give our kids the ease and comfort of playing a zone per se. But depending on what you do as an offense, I can zone match you like you would in basketball, and and close down those tighter windows, right? Like I've never played a vision and break zone ever in my life. Not in high school, not in college, nothing. And so I wouldn't even know how to begin to even teach the country cover 3 vision and break stuff. I just don't know. I don't have any experience with it. I'm sure I could figure it out, but I don't really want to. I like the ability to match up on the perimeter, right? But also the things that, vertical releases we're going to match. Basically, that's how I say it. Vertical releases we're going to match. Anything else, we're going to zone it off, but we're going to match it play like a matchup zone integrity, right? So the things that beat, man coverage or, rub routes, crossing routes, those types of things, there are built-in answers to it already, as opposed to taking a bunch of man guys and then trying to get them to fight through crossing routes, as you guys would call them, tight bunch sets. I think it gives you the best of both worlds. So when I want to say back in 2013, Ron Ullery wanted to switch to the 3-3 stack. And after the 2013 season, so I got a bunch of Saint X stuff and met with Steve Speck, and so I started learning their fire and storm coverage, which is kind of like the match stuff. It's similar too, and I fell in love with it. I'm like, oh man, like this gives me kind of the best of both worlds, and how some people's brains just think like it just makes more sense to me, right?
Yeah.
Like it where maybe 2 read makes sense to like Rob Page, he says, well, one of my best friends, he likes playing 2 read and it makes sense to him, where to me, like I don't particularly care for it, and there's too many what ifs, there's too many, in my opinion, there's too much other little things. Yeah. I do like the diversity of it, being able to play, okay, who's take 2 to the flat, who's this, who's that, blah, blah, blah. But when I hear like the match quarter stuff, And then you have the overhang players playing inside of number 2, and then number 2 runs an out route, and a safety comes out of the roof from 10 yards and drives on an out route, and they're telling me that's man match quarters. Bullshit. That's freaking man. That's not man match quarters. If you're driving on an out route from 10 yards, you're not matching anything. You are playing man to man. You're just playing off man, right? And everybody, so I don't know. It's just one of those things that makes sense to me. I like the diversity of it. I like the things that I don't. Like I can technically call 6 or 7 different coverages technically, but really only 2 people are changing, but we're giving you the same look, the same part. We're just changing the parts. And I kind of like that diversity of it. And where I can change up blitzers and still run the same stuff. Like I don't have to, I don't have to prepare for install a 2-high defense and then install man defense and then install fire zone defense. Like I don't have to do all that.
Yeah.
I'm installing one thing for the most part, and then my fire zone stuff and man stuff works off of it. Like because our man free stuff is almost identical to our rip list stuff, except for 1 or 2 little things that we do differently. And that's what I like about it. The simplicity of it, when it allows us to look a hell of a lot more complicated than what we really are.
Now you're a lot smarter than I am.
Yeah, right. No one's ever said that
now,
before.
see, I sit here and talk to smart people and try to learn some things. That's part of the reason why this got started. So, I've heard the man match versus zone match, probably more this offseason than I have ever. Honestly, I don't know if I've heard the term man match prior to this offseason. In all honesty, you learn new terms every year. Because I was talking to Nick Davis the other night, and he talked about he's a man match. His Ripple Is stuff is essentially man match. Like that's his basis, and he's kind of adapted the Ripple Is off of it. So what for you, especially for my audience who maybe don't know, what is the main difference between man match and zone match?
I don't know. There's a bunch of different ways that people define it. Kind of the way to me is like, okay, are you dropping into an area, right, and matching someone that comes into that area? That would be more of your zone match, right? If you're dropping on receivers and then like one of those if this then that type scenarios, right, then that's more of a man match. One of the ways that you can tell between a man match and a zone match, is how the linebackers react, right? So like in the 2x2 video, when I talked about the way the University of Cincinnati plays a horizontal stretch by number 3 out of the backfield, right? So if they get a fast 3 out of the backfield, the linebacker just runs with it, right? That's man match, right? Like, because their overhang player is playing, everything he does is based off of number 2, right? So if 2 does this, I do that. Yeah. But if 3 is fast as a flat, that linebacker's gone, right? Where in a zone match, if you get that, then you're getting a fast 3, you're getting a horizontal stretch by number 3. So you're going to go ahead and flood the coverage that way and play 4 over 3.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of like then like you got the man match quarter stuff, the cover 7 stuff from Coach Saban. That it's kind of the same thing. Like, so it's like the 3-2 exchange. You hear that talk about a lot in the man match stuff. Like with the stump and stubby or whatever you want to call it, or bracket. Or not really bracket, like I guess bracket, and then like Steel or Seahawk, one of those man match things. So then like you get an exchange by 3 and 2, then they're just going to switch guys, right? And then the high safety will take the vertical of one of those too. And so it's just now if I was a quarters guy, I'd play a man match quarters. Because again, like I said, that makes a little bit more sense to me than just dropping like, hey, we're going to play a robber coverage, and I'm going to tell the corner he's not playing man, but he's really playing man, and but if 2 is under 5 yards, we're going to take him. But if he's over 5 yards, you got to let him go. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, that to me, that's kind of the main difference of it. Like, how the linebackers play it. Are you dropping into a zone and matching receivers in that zone? Or is what you're doing predicated by what a certain receiver does, right?
Yeah. That's perfect. I just wanted some clarity on that because, like I said, I've heard it a lot, and I'm not smart enough to know what the hell. I have an idea, but like, again, pick on somebody smarter. Um, where was it? I had a great question. I just lost my entire train of thought. Um,
I ramble too much.
oh no, you're fine. I like good stories. Um, let's go in this direction. Now, let's continue with some man coverage before I start bugging you about defending the triple. Um, like I said, you played corner, and that's kind of where your, I mean, specialty is a bad word because, I mean, hell, we can become a specialist at something. But
Right.
I mean, how have you taught man coverage in the past to kids? Like, what is that? Because I'll say this, like when I was a DC, I sucked at teaching man. Like I could teach zone all day long, and be fine with it to the secondary, but I sucked ass at teaching man. How have you taught technique wise, especially to corners, man coverage?
Um, well, I mean, I spend a lot of time obviously on footwork, right? Like really, um, just getting into a comfortable and smooth pedal, getting their pad level and hip level in a comfortable way to be able to move and redirect. It's funny. I used to always, when I first started coaching, I could say like, in your man pedal, when I used to teach a back pedal all the time, I used to say, have your feet be like a typewriter, like, you know what I mean? And it made sense 20 years ago. Now the kids are like, I don't have any idea what in the hell you're talking, what a typewriter is. Right. And so, but I think it's like perfecting the little subtle turns and really getting them to trust, like leverage, where to fit, not just on the ball, but not on just the man, but on the ball. How to like, you really have to spend a lot of, if you're going to play a lot of off man uh, coverage, you're going to have to really go over and over and over and talk about like do a cushion recognition drill. I think I spent a lot of time going over footwork, body position, eye discipline, and when we were also too, like, what was your philosophy, right? So like we're playing off man, like we're going to tackle 3-step. We're not going to try to defend it. So like if you're going to run hitch, okay, like that's fine, throw it. We're going to make the tackle. You're going to run a speed out. That's fine, throw it, but just make the tackle. Then, but anything down the field, we want to try to deny the ball, right?
Yeah.
But also teaching them when it's okay to turn and look for the ball. So you're teaching them in phase, out of phase. If you're playing a man free concept, right, you got to teach them dividers and divider leverage, and once they get to know that pre and post snap, then that makes it so much easier for them to deny the ball or play the ball in the air, because now they know where they fit on, not only on the route but on the man and where we're pushing your help to, right? It's no different than in basketball, when like whether your defense you're gonna push the guy into the baseline, or you're gonna push him to the middle of the court, right? You're gonna leverage him this way and not get beat there,
Yeah.
right? But be able to push him to where you want him to go, right? And then so like man free stuff, if that guy's inside the divider, we want to play in a low trail so we can undercut every route. So any in breaking route from that point on, we're going to undercut it because we have high and inside help. So make the ball go over top of me. And if he does make a mistake in throwing the ball, that's fine. We're able to undercut it and deny it. If he's outside the divider, we're going to teach that guy, be a little faster in your pedal. And then you're going to try to keep that guy cut off. If you run a vertical route and you have him stacked and you're on top of him, right, then you can look for the ball. But if you guys are even, or if you're just slightly inside of him in a trail, you have to play his eyes through his hands, right? And I think that's why when guys don't major in that kind of stuff, they struggle with coaching it because it's not just as simple as, okay, you got him. Like people say, oh, you got cat, that's cat coverage. You got him. Like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, you do. But there's a lot more technique and a lot more little things that you have to teach, little subtle things, right, to get them to really excel and be good at playing, in my opinion, playing it properly, right? And those are things that I had to learn in college because we played a crap load of man-to-man, and when you're not very big and you're going up against a lot bigger guys, right, you got to learn how to compete. You got to learn to use your head and your technique, when you're lining up and it's just you versus him, right? So I think that's, really try to push like the intensity of how important this is, getting kids to really care, getting them to be excited about playing man coverage.
Okay, that's perfect, Coach. Now, I did remember what my other question was. Do you, because you're a big cover 3 guy, do you play any of the old Michigan State / Pat Narduzzi, like 3 deep, 2 under stuff, the fire hot stuff?
You talking about the eyes or hot coverage, whatever it's called? Nah, not really. We've played it. I played it in 2016, but I didn't know what the hell it was called. We were running a 6-man pressure, and we were like, the ball's going to get out quick. Let's just put the 2 overhangs when we're blitzing both backers. And again, right, those are where you're looking at the quarterback and the ball's got to get out quick. And, I fooled around with it during practice, but like I suck at coaching defense like that, and we just weren't very good. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like try to get them to wall people to the outside, but no, I haven't played it much. No.
Okay. I just curious. I remember God, who was it spoke at our state clinic? It was like it might have been Narduzzi. I don't know. It was somebody, and they spoke on it, and I loved it. I just like I'm not even gonna try to do this because I don't know how to teach this shit. But like
it's I think it's something that's pretty valuable. Like you can't live in it, right? But it's something I think would be good. Like on 1st and 10, they're going to run the ball, and you want to get a lot of guys in gaps,
Yeah.
But also too, man, like to me, like I don't particularly care for blitzing gap scheme teams because you can get washed. But if it's a heavy zone team, I think it's a good thing. The ball's going to get out quick. I mean, we just always preached. We were trying to preach, like, read the quarterback's eyes, but then just make the tackle. But how high school kids are, man. You tell them that, and their feet stop. And like I said, and, I wasn't patient enough, and I just suck at coaching that vision and break stuff. So.
Now we have to move in second half of this podcast to the triple because you've gotten sort of a reputation as the triple defender from your time at Centerville. And then the fact that, I mean, we've made it no secret at Fairborn that's where we stole the defense to stop, or at least mitigate Xena this past year. Like, and a lot of that's because of Roy Toby. Roy Toby knew what you did and then brought it over here and taught Mike Derry and so forth. And Mike Derry's talked about it on this channel. And I'll be honest, I remember when Xena had both their Division I offensive linemen and mauled our league. You were like the only team in our league that didn't get completely mauled. I mean, we all lost to Xena that year. They were good.
Right.
But you mitigated the pain. I think you held them like 21 or something.
Yeah, they beat us. They beat us 20-0. They scored twice on 2 blown assignments.
Yeah, like that. I mean, it helps when you have 2 Division I offensive linemen. I mean, but I mean, where did you come up with your style of defending the triple? Because I wouldn't really call it a 4-4, but you had a variation of whatever that was. Where did you steal that from, or come up with the idea to kind of, okay, this is how we're going to at least try to slow them down? Because you did that there, and then who do you guys beat? Like when you were at Centerville, was it Fairmont or whatever? That was, I mean, so where did you get all that those ideas and how to do that?
Well, I mean, I was a triple option quarterback in high school. And then, like I said, I started off as a triple option guy when I first started coaching. And then, but I think also too, like I'm of that age where, when we set up a defense, our base plan is, How do you stop? Who's on the dive? Who's on a quarterback? Who's on a pitch? You know, like we don't start off in 10 personnel spread and saying who's going to stop the zone. You know what I mean? Like we always think of like when we're installing, we're always thinking of dive, quarterback, pitch. And, you know, I think some of that too is, you know, kind of why sometimes we've had some success against some RPO teams because we still think about it in that sense. But so when I was at Centerville, obviously under Ron, like, you know, we were really good in the triple, right? I mean, averaging 400 yards of offense a game and 42 points. And, you know, so when you go against that, right, and then so you start talking, hey, so what do you not like to see, right?
Yeah. And
so Ron basically told us, well, this is what we don't like. This is what, you know, it depends on what kind of option team you're going up against. You're going up against flex bone, right? I mean, it's an A gap, B gap offense. So, you know, we want to we don't want the fullback to beat us. Then after that, you know, we don't want the quarterback to beat us. So if you pitch the ball and run rocket toss and all that stuff, and you're able to beat us with that, or maybe you can throw it, you know, and beat us, that's fine. But our goal going into it is that, you know, you're not going to beat us by running midline and freaking ISO, right? Like, so we usually have a couple different looks that we try to give, and we just try to really pile up in the A gaps and B gaps and get the ball out wide. And another thing too is that we never just have one guy on the dive, one guy on the quarterback, and one guy on the pitch. We're always trying to get at least 1.5, and sometimes we try to manipulate it to get 2 on each one. So that way, if you run load option or you manipulate the count in your favor, and so you can't block our force player that's normally the pitch guy, we have another half a guy or even a full guy on that depending on the call. And that was something I got from Ron. Ron, like, we scrimmaged them one year, like an inter-squad scrimmage, and they just killed us, and they just kept manipulating the count. And then he used that as a teaching point to us. Like, if you're just putting one guy on there, it's not going to take a good triple team to figure out what you're doing, and they can manipulate the count by, okay, we want to get the ball on the perimeter. We know this guy has it, so we'll count him now as number 3 or whatever it is. Like, I think they go 1, 2, 3 or whatever. And that's how, like, so he said, hey, look, do it this way, right? So we have a couple different ways that we like to do it. You know, a couple of our rotations on the back end are a little different. Sometimes we have that kind of adjuster guy in the middle where he's running the alley both sides to the pitch. Plus we already have the outside, you know, overhang player playing the pitch. You know, sometimes we'll make a call where if you send, you know, the offense's right slot in motion, we'll take our left overhang and run him completely on the other side and have him run down the pitch and still play. You know what I mean? So we just do a couple different little things like that subtly that try to, and it's helped sometimes, right? And then we don't give our linemen, they're all dive, baby. I don't tell my 5 technique, look, if he blocks out or if he does this, we don't do any daylight, no daylight reads. Dude, if your guy blocks out, you're closing. If he blocks down, you're closing. It doesn't matter. You are a dive player. So we put basically 6 guys on the dive and then 1.5 on everyone after that.
Yeah.
And then just, you know, plus 2, like, I know this seems like really counter to every other defensive coach against triple. I will blitz a hell of a lot more than most people do against that. Like, we just do like simple gap exchange, really, is all we're doing. Yeah. So we just run, you know, maybe a double A or a double B or double 2 guys coming off the edge, you know. I mean, it's as an option quarterback, if you're pretty stagnant, I remember, like, plays a 50 team that likes to slant a lot, right? Like, to me, as an option quarterback, that made it a hell of a lot easier for me to make my read if you were slanting, because you did it right now, right? It didn't matter what our lineman did. I knew, like, you declared right away.
Yeah.
Right. And nobody ever blitzed us. So I never had to worry about, the inside linebacker being, the A-gap dive player.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. We just do it. We just probably do it a little bit more than most. And, it's been okay. I mean, we don't live and die by the blitz, but, some teams get pretty tough. You know what I mean? Like, you play some, like Xenia, right? Like, they'll put 6 offensive linemen in there and put 4 of them on one side.
Yes.
And it's all window dressing, right? Mm-hmm. Like, they do that and run freaking midline.
Yeah.
So they can line up like that all they want. I don't care. We don't adjust to it. They have those 4 fat bodies sitting out there outside of C-gap. Like, I don't care. You're not going to run it out there. What play runs to the 4th offensive lineman, right? I mean, like, so we just don't really adjust to it. Like, we know what they're going to do. We just make it unbelievably simple for our guys. And also, it's not what we do is not a whole lot different than what we do in our base defense. Like, we don't run something different. I mean, it's a little different, but not a whole lot. And then also, like, we practice it in the summer. So, like, you can come to our practice in week 3 or week 4 of the summer, and we're going against Fairmont stuff, right? I mean, so it's not, we don't practice it that Monday. The kids have seen it a couple of times before we get started.
Oh, no, when they announced that Xenia was our week 1 this year, we spent the next 3 weeks practicing that defense. Like, that's
right.
It's like, okay, here you go.
Yeah.
I mean,
what's like Xenia, right? So when they get in their trips look with that, I mean, they're running midline.
Yeah.
And then, with their team, like, the way Xenia's ran it is that whatever that slot did told you what the play was, right? So if he stayed outside the tackle, it was a triple option play. If he folded inside, it was midline or ISO.
Yeah.
So if your overhang is responding to that, right, and your safety that's sliding over is responding to that, and they're able to have enough eye discipline to really see that consistently, you have a much better chance of defending what they're going to run.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we just, it just wasn't as, I don't know. And then sometimes, like, we have, that year they had those big guys 2 years ago, and we had all those little guys up front. Shit. They couldn't run midline because we lined up in 2 eyes, and our guys cut the inside leg of the guard.
Yeah.
Just a pile of people in A-gap.
Oh, yeah. No, trust me, I remember watching that. I'm like, well, and then we just sucked against them that year. And
they were good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, those 2 linemen alone were just – you could have ran any offense behind those 2 linemen. It did not matter. They were freaks. Like, one went to, Cincinnati, and the other one went to Furman. Yeah. Like, 2 legitimate college programs. You're like, okay, yeah. That's.
And you have Bartley's younger son playing. I mean, they were good. They were big, and they were athletic.
Yeah.
They were quarterback wasn't bad. Number 3, that little slot back was really good.
Yeah, and then they had 2 decent outside linebackers on defense that kind of gave you a little bit of problems.
Oh,
so, yeah.
Yeah. Jeez, they 6'5" and long. That usually helps.
Yeah. One had like 9 sacks. The other one had 7 or whatever it was. Yeah. So, now, but you mentioned different looks there. That's one thing I noticed this year when I watched you guys play them this year. You gave a lot more different looks than you had the prior year when they had the 2 gargantuan boys there. What caused that? I mean, obviously you want to adjust your looks every year, so so you're not so predictable. Certain people in that league, but so what kind of caused those changes?
Just we didn't. Well, what they started doing the year before, what they did to us was, they started running a little bit more of an outside veer play. So they tightened their splits down and ran the same path.
Yeah.
And they were taking their slot, and they were just loading him up on our inside backer and pinning him in there. So we went to a change-up look was more of we called it diamond, and it was something that that Wayne did to us in Centerville in 2010, and just completely wrecked us the first time we played him. We played him on national TV on ESPN, and they completely destroyed us. Basically, so it's like you have a 0, and then we had 0. I think it was 2 4 eyes, and then either a 5 if they didn't have a tight end. If they had a tight end, then we put him in a 6, and all those guys just went screaming down as fast as they could, hard, and we would kind of stack the 2 inside guys and then stack the overhangs and let them kind of take everything else that spilled out to it. And it worked sometimes. So they were running. It gave us an extra body on the outside where we could close down the dive, basically. Okay. And because we weren't getting to the dive, so they were running inside veer. They were walling down our 2 technique and our 5 technique, and our overhang and backer, who were responsible for quarterback. The backer was getting pinned, and the quarterback the overhang didn't know who. He just saw a dive coming at him. He was like, "Oh shit, I don't know who to take," and he was wrong because they just had us outnumbered. And so we just changed it in this year, and had some success with it. I mean, it's not very sound, so we couldn't really like live and die by it, but it was a good change up. So we started, and +2, we blitzed the corner a little bit more against them this year than we had in years past. We blitzed the overhangs off the edge a little bit more to kind of give that quarterback a different look, to kind of create some confusion. And they were running a lot of counter triple against us, or I don't know if you want to call it mid triple or whatever, but dive one way or motioning one way and then rocking everything back the other way. And
that old Sarkisian used a lot against who was it in the championship game? Was Ohio State or whatever, that fake orbit that released back out. That's the old triple motion.
Like we used to do that against Fairmont, where when they would motion, we would just rotate, right? So they would give that motion, that guy would get halfway, and we start to rotate, and then they would run triple coming back the other way, and it would be a pull pitch every single time, because the way their rules stacked up, it was pull pitch, and they had us leveraged. And I mean, they gashed us a couple times in like I want to say like 2017, 2016, right around 2017, I think it was. And so we had to adjust now. So we adjusted how we were playing against them with that. But one of the adjustments we made at Butler is that, okay, we're going to bring that overhang off the edge, right? And so when that quarterback, when they do that little rock coming back and he opens up, all of a sudden he's got somebody screaming right in his face. And that had a tendency to help us a little bit against them. But probably fool's gold.
Now, last question I want to ask you before we go. Now, obviously, I know you're a huge Coach Vass fan. That is your jam there. And for any coaches that haven't seen his 2 clinics, make sure you check those out, because Coach gives out some coaching resources during those, both from a book perspective and kind of people to follow for the rib list stuff. But is there anybody else that you kind of follow? So obviously you're a big rib list guy, but and Coach Vass fan, but is there anybody you've been studying this offseason? You're like, that's some nice, interesting stuff. Like,
Well, I look. One guy that's great for any kind of one high thing is a guy named Kyle Kogan on Twitter, and he's got a couple coach tube courses. He's really good, really smart. And he's usually pretty quick to get, like I'll send him a DM of a question about something, and he usually responds back pretty fast. But his coach tube courses are really good. Another one that's really good is Dante Barty, who's Coach Kogan is a high school coach in Missouri. I think he's in the Kansas City area. I'm not sure. And then Dante Barty, I think, he's an assistant at Southern Miss, I believe.
Yeah, I just followed him the other day.
He's really good. Also, Dan Lanning, the defensive coordinator at Georgia. So like on Vass's Patreon, like you get like, I don't know, 150 hours of film, and his Georgia film is amazing. And like the teach tape for the rip list stuff and the teach tape for their tight front or mint front. And it's really good. Like I drove to St. Louis 2 years ago for the Glazier Clinic, literally to listen to him speak on, I think, Friday night or Saturday morning, and woke up the next morning and drove back, and it was worth every penny of it. He was fantastic. Like I sat in the front row, me and our linebacker coach, Joe Kitchell, and he sat there and answered every question and was phenomenal. But like those are the things I've been really looking at a lot. Yeah. Is just his Patreon. There's a bunch of guys on that Patreon, that Discord channel he has. That's there's a guy named Slade Calhoun that I think that's his name in Memphis area. That's really good. He knows quite a bit about one high stuff. He's a good defensive guy, especially we're listening to him talk on there. And then there's a guy that I'm not really sure how to pronounce his name. I want to say it's like Salami or Salami.
Yeah.
He coaches, I believe, down in Georgia, but he's really good. One high rip liz guy. He's on Twitter as well. But like I've been spending most of my time on Vass's Patreon. Like it's unbelievable. It's worth every penny of it.
And then I lied. I do have one more question. Do you have any podcast appropriate Dan Kerns stories while we're here?
Podcast appropriate? Not yet. Except for we're really going to find out how good of a coach he is this year. I mean, he doesn't have a bunch of college receivers that he's coaching.
Okay.
Like he's actually going to have to put a practice plan together, I think, this year, as opposed to just walking out there with a cell phone, just in flip flops. So,
I gotta have a little fun with them. So,
I don't check back with me in about 2 months. I'm sure we'll have I'll have some for you.
I bet this will be golden. So I can't wait to hear this. This will be great. So coaches, make sure you give Coach a follow. Again, his clinics will be below. Check out the sponsors and the Patreon and the affiliates. All that stuff helps support the channel by clicking on that stuff. Either join the Patreon or buying stuff from our affiliates. It helps go back to I still need to get that new green screen and a couple other things while we're filming this. That way it doesn't look like my hand's missing half the time, as you can see here. And other than that, thank you. Like, share, subscribe, all that lovely stuff. And thank you for listening to our episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.